Hello, welcome to Good Games Well Played, episode 170. I'm Clint, aka JCM. With this week is Isley
Yo.
and Messiah.
Hello.
And whoa, you sound kind of close and bassy there.
What am I?
You just sound like you were kind of right up on your mic there, being like,
Oh,
"Hello."
sorry.
it was just funny. It threw me off. You're like, we're getting NPR. We're gonna get right up in there. Welcome to the
We've
channel.
replaced Saya with someone else.
Yeah. Who are you? This is an imposter. But yeah, we got an interesting week of news here. So before we get into the big stuff, there was rumors that Avowed was going to be delayed, and like recently with anything that's been kind of rumored, it tends to be true, especially when it comes to delays here. Except for apparently, Star Wars Outlaws isn't going to be delayed, but some people, I guess that wasn't necessarily rumor. People thought it might get delayed, but that's still coming on time. But Avowed got delayed to February, apparently to, quote, give players backlogs some breathing room. I'm like, is that really?
Weird thing to say, like as if everybody's playing everything that ever comes out.
Yeah, that's why it's so weird, because the Xbox tweet says so many games coming. As such, we're moving Avowed to February 18th, 2025 to give players backlogs some breathing room. Stay tuned for more info of our games across Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, and Xbox Game Studios at Gamescom, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, so the current...
I feel like what that usually means is we have another game that's coming out at the same time, and we need the sales from both of them and don't want to poach our own sales.
Yeah.
Because the only time I've seen that in the past is like, I think it was Battlefield or something, like some shooter moved due to either Battlefield releasing on the same weekend or something else. But that wasn't because they wanted to give players time. It was more of like, oh yeah, they're going to get way more sales than us, therefore we have to move our game to make money still.
Yeah, people typically move out of the way of Call of Duty. Although that typically always has like a November release time, so usually they can judge pretty well when it is. But yeah, when you look at, okay, the current release schedule for all the games that Microsoft is a part of, you got, because it was supposed to be a fall game Avowed. There wasn't an official release date for it. But as far as coming out later, you got the World of Warcraft: The War Within on August 26th, Age of Mythology Retold September 4th, Aura History Untold September 24th, Diablo 4 Vessel Hatred October 8th, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 October 25th, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 November 19th, Indiana Jones and the Great Circles TBD, Starfield Shattered Spaces TBD, Towerborn is TBD, and like, okay, so I'm guessing you'll probably were going to release it sometime around when you were going to do Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, because that's the only thing that makes sense. Everything else, like, there's no other games that are like it, and like Starfield is just DLC, but none of these other games are like competing really. Like the closest thing you can get of those other ones is like Diablo. That's like as far as just fantasy, but it must be just Indiana Jones. Like, hey, we want to give Indiana Jones more breathing room, and versus Avowed, because yeah, these are all through like September, October. It's like you got November, which is pretty empty at least. Obviously you'll have like Assassin's Creed, but it's Flight Simulator. It's like you got plenty of time in November to put some, like, cause Call of Duty's released in late October. It's like it's not going to do that early November release time. Like, you've got time, so November must be Indiana Jones, and they probably want to get it out. But yeah, I guess sure, whatever. Like, if you want to give more space to your own stuff. I mean, we saw that with like during the pandemic when it started and they delayed Last of Us 2, and because of that they also delayed Ghost of Tsushima. So they pushed them both to kind of give them, space between. But yeah, interesting. Just, hey, yeah, we're just moving because there's too much stuff. It's like, what if I wasn't interested in any of the other stuff? Like, I'm not playing Starfield or Call of Duty or the Diablo DLC. Like, Indiana Jones, maybe, if my Game Pass is still active, my free trial. But
it feels like they're trying to save face against something that nobody cares about. Like, just say that you don't want to compete with these other releases. Like, nobody cares. The people that want to play your game are going to play your game regardless. But
yeah,
it's just very weird.
Yeah, it's weird announcement. Like, no, you guys got too much. We don't want to give you enough. Like, we're gonna delay it. But and then the other big news is that Valorant is now officially released on console. So they had, like, because they went into open beta not that long ago. Like, I want to say just like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Like, short open beta period, and like, bam, we're good. Our closed beta was good. Open beta is good. We're prepped to launch. So it's now just officially out. So now you can just play the regular game, no longer in beta form. So That's what I'm curious to see how that'll do on console. And then another article I saw. So this is actually something that was kind of someone tweeted about this before the last podcast, but I didn't comment on it because I was kind of waiting for like an official write up. I read some of the documents, but I didn't read the whole thing. But so one of the big things in online shooters is skill based matchmaking. Like it's a big contentious topic in the shooter community. Like some people hate it, some people like it. Usually they want it off in something like a battle royale, but keep it on in like ranked, like actual matches, like deathmatch, team deathmatch, stuff like that. And Activision released a 25-page paper on how they secretly turned off skill-based matchmaking in Call of Duty as an experiment, and turns out players hated it without them even realizing.
Players hated it being turned off. Like they weren't aware that skill-based matchmaking was turned off and responded more negatively.
Yeah, they thought it was still on. They turned it off without telling them. The gameplay experience got worse for them. They complained about it more, assuming it was SBMM, but it wasn't. They turned it off. And so it's like they were complaining about something that they wanted off. Like, hey, we don't want skill-based matchmaking. Okay, so we secretly turned it off. Turns out you guys hate it. So it's like reverse placebo of, yeah, it was really funny. Yeah, there's a big breakdown. I'm not going to go into like the full thing of, because again, there's a lot of
25 pages seems like a lot for something.
Well, because it's a lot of like detail points about it. Let's see. So
it's got to just be all the backup data, because being able to determine like hate and like more so than usual in a game that's already pretty toxic probably needs a lot of backup points.
Yeah, there's so much stuff in there. Like this one bit here about how. So I'll just kind of skim some of the opening bits. Again, this is a nice summary from IGN here. Rebecca Valentine reported on it. But in a 25-page white paper published this week, Activision reveals that it actually conducted an experiment in 2023 Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. 2023's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, where it reduced skill-based matchmaking for some of its players, resulting in more players quitting games or not coming back to the game for many seasons. Currently, Activision says the way matchmaking works in Call of Duty is by taking into account a number of factors. Top priority is player connection quality, the time it takes to enter a match, but other factors include skill, platform, recent maps, modes, other things are considered too. And skill itself is a complex equation that takes into account individual match total kills, kill-death ratios, and kill deaths by enemy ratios to ensure players can't drop their skill levels on purpose by self-killing. Skill levels are recalculated after every match, and Activision says it's constantly trying to find a happy balance, ensuring players aren't seeing wild swings in their games. So you don't want to be like, they want to still give you a challenge, not make it too easy, and yada yada. In the study earlier this year, Activision ran a deprioritized skill test where the developers decreased skills importance in matchmaking in the algorithm, but did not shut it off entirely. It ran the tests for 50% of its North American player base for a 2-week period in early 2024, and here are some of the results. They can observe the percentage difference in the number of players returning after 14 days between the treatment and the control groups. With deprioritized skill, returning player rate was down significantly for 90% of players. The 10% highest skilled players came back in increased numbers, but in aggregate, and we saw meaningfully fewer players come back to the game. So it's like, okay, when we decrease some of the things, it's like you're just seeing less player retention. It's like, because clearly they're not having fun. So it's just...
I wonder how much of it really just boils down to people thinking they're better than they are at a game. So everyone wants skill-based matchmaking off because they think that they're playing the harder opponents due to skill-based matchmaking, and that's why they're losing. But when you turn it off, what they're really discovering is that they suck and they're not actually the better player. So they quit because they suck more. I genuinely wonder how much of it is like a bias of thinking that you are far better at a game than you actually are.
Yeah. It's funny. The paper also details other data as well, including a similar survey where Activision tightened the skill constraints in matchmaking and saw an inverse of results where higher skilled players dropped off at a higher rate, but lower skilled players stuck around more frequently. It also saw a higher rate of blowouts when one team wins a match with a significantly higher score than the other. When skill was deprioritized, obviously, because the chances of you being matched up with someone who's out of your league is going to be exponentially higher. than if you had skill-based matchmaking turned on. So players that have left from there, lower kill per minute rates with lower skilled players. So basically, when SBMM was turned down low, the vast majority of players had less fun and it didn't come back to play the game. So it's just, yeah, it is really funny. It's like, yeah, I mean, because the problem is, especially when you start off, it's like, okay, if a game launches no skill-based matchmaking, or it has it initially, like it can take a while to actually like acclimate to your, your player level. And even in like when you look at like ranked leagues for like Apex, it's like typically gold and even platinum are usually where kind of it plateaus. Like it's always a bell curve, right, of player distribution, and eventually you get to a point where, yeah, you're gonna, in theory, once you're perfectly balanced, you'll win 50% and lose 50%. Like that's just the way it goes. The downside with COD is something like, especially in the team-based game, it's like you're relying on other people. There's also other factors that can change between each, map and just how well those players gel together with communication, what have you. But it's like, okay, it's you just got to get used to the fact that, yeah, you're not going to win every match. Like you could have close matches be fine, or you'll have blowout, you'll have bad days. Like it's like people just turn off skill. Like that some arguments are always like, I want to come home and just relax and play a game and not have to worry about being matched up with sweats. That's why people smurf a lot, is because they just want to be matched up against some people who aren't pros, so they don't have to go as hard to play the game. And I get that, like, okay, I want to just relax and play and just play a little more casual, not okay, but it's like that's why you have an unranked playlist.
Yeah, well, and also conceptually, in a competitive game, there's not such a thing as just relaxing and playing casual. Like,
right, exactly.
Any sort of competitive game, you're either playing against people that are better than you, or maybe you're playing against people that are worse from you. And when people say what they want is casual, what they really mean is they want to play against people that are worse than them so that they can crush them. Like sweats doesn't necessarily mean that the players are actually like, trying really hard. It may just mean that the other player is better than you. And if you aren't in the top 50% of players, that means that if skill-based matchmaking is turned off, most of your matches are going to have people that are better than you. Therefore, you're going to get pissed off.
Yeah, but again, like just play unranked. That's what unranked is for. It's because it's a crapshoot. You don't know who you're gonna get. It could be a match that you don't have to try as hard. It's like you don't need to lock in because you just goof around. And really, the casualness of it comes down to who you're playing with. Like if I'm just playing with a group of friends, like it's like, okay, we're not gonna be tryhards. Just have fun, sit back, a little more relaxed as you play. If you die, no one cares. That's where the mindset has to come down to, is with your team, not how you get matched in in the game. But
first of all, who's playing a competitive shooter to relax? Second of all, people will find any excuse to blame the game or the systems rather than admit that they're just kind of mid and maybe having an off day or something. Like,
yeah.
If they lose, if they win, they'll say that they're great and the game is perfect and it's working great and it's really fun and relaxing. If they're losing or having a bad day, they'll blame the game and the systems.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone into like Apex where I'm just like, hey, I would just want to come home, relax, and play some video games. And I play Apex, or I played Fortnite back in the day. But like in Apex, when they added ranked, it's like, okay, when I want to take this serious and lock in, sit forward, playing kind of situation, like I play ranked. And typically for a while there, I only played ranked because I wanted to make sure that, because the problem I always ran into is if I wasn't playing with a pre-made team, it's like I didn't like having that where like, oh, this guy on my team is way too hardcore, even if his skill doesn't match his attitude. It's like he's too into it and I can't deal with that. Like I just want to play with people who are more casual, and not do it. Whereas if I play skill based, it's like I know, okay, if I'm in silver as I work my way up, it's like these people are in silver too. I can expect what their play style is going to be like, yada yada, and what level of communication could come from that. They're not going to drop. They're also not going to drop out if they die immediately because they landed solo or something. It's like that's usually why I play ranked, is to avoid those shoddy teammates. But yeah, it's just interesting paper you can read. Like I said, there's a lot more details in there. But again, 25 pages. It's a lot to go through. But basically, hey, we turned it off. You didn't like it. That's how it goes.
I mean, it does make sense. And I will admit, like when I play shooters and things, the most enjoyment I get out of a shooter is usually when I'm playing with a team and we crush the other people. But that doesn't mean it's fair, right? Like that that's
Yeah,
not
that
necessarily a good experience for anyone else.
yeah,
So
and I've never had like a good time in a game where BRs you'll get this a lot where you might not run into anybody the entire match. You're just by the way the drop was, whatever the way you did your rotations. And then the last match you get in, it's like it's the final match. You and the last team, maybe it's 3 against 2, and they're really not that good because they just kind of like rat strat the whole thing, and you beat them. It's like, okay, I won, but it wasn't necessarily satisfying. Like I've had better games in Apex where I have really good fights and encounters early on, but we lose like halfway through. Like for me, it's like I had great encounters. That was the fun. I know I lost, whatever, but winning isn't the thing. It's like I like those encounters. I like having good engagements, communication, like, oh, we took someone down, we got our team up, whatever. If we lose, like, oh well, you still had a good time. And at least in ranked, that was kind of the thing too, where it's like if you leave a game with positive RP, doesn't matter if you lose. It's like, okay, we still got good RP. That means you performed well enough to earn those points to keep going towards your rank. It's not always about the win, because they kind of retooled like winning used to be early on like the biggest thing. Or kills was also one. It's like, oh, most kills. So people would just land hot, get a bunch of kills, and that would carry them up through the ranks. And eventually, like, okay, let's decentivize the total kill bonus, do a little bit more in the positioning, and kind of bring down some of those top winnings until you get up to the higher leagues, like in Apex rank and Predator and what have you. But yeah, it's like it's all for me. It's all about like the encounters. Like we had a good encounter. It's like I could die later by getting just some surprise team coming in on me or just a bad engagement at one time. But I like the fun encounters. Those are always good times. But yeah, interesting stuff. And then let's see what else I got here. I have to reopen my app because I closed it because you're talking so much about the skill-based matchmaking. But the big thing that happened this week was that Bungie saw a bunch of cuts to staff. About 220 staff members cut, or 70% of the workforce there. I know some of their folks went to a new Sony like internal team, so it wasn't just layoffs across there. So it's like, well, it's double. It's the layoffs plus the transition of like 155 roles that left to some Sony internal new dev team. So 375 staff essentially are no longer at Bungie.
I saw a lot of like drama over this one in particular of people being really pissed off because I think that, like, as typical, the people in charge took really big bonuses. But it really just feels like every game studio right now is just laying a ton of people off. It doesn't feel like it's related to Bungie specifically. It feels like this is like a problem everywhere at the moment.
Well, they talked about here, like, yeah, when Sony acquired them, like the head of the studio like bought like 25 exotic cars or something like that. Like they got like a big bonus. They just bought a bunch of expensive cars. But then also people at the studio reported that they misrepresented their financials to Sony before Sony acquired them. So it's like someone said, like, if Sony didn't buy us, we would have closed because we were doing so poorly financially. And they cooked their books essentially, which is what's really interesting about this, because like, okay, so you lied. At some point, Sony has to find out when they review your financials after the fact, like, especially if you did so, because there was talk about, oh, if the final shape or the whatever DLC at the time, like if it doesn't do well, Sony could downsize, because that's always the concern, because anytime someone acquires someone, they're always Jason Schreier had a great tweet. It was like, Xbox acquires this, they see a bunch of people get laid off, so and so acquires this, a bunch of people laid off, Sony and Bungie. But this was driven by Bungie. But it's like, you lied about your financials to Sony. Like, I can't imagine Sony was super happy about that. Like, hey, we acquired you because we thought you were healthy, and
they must have known something was up, though, because Bungie has always been very, very like publicly anti being owned by anyone else. I mean, it's a company that tried to buy their independence back from Microsoft. So logically, like, you don't change that culture of wanting independence to suddenly wanting to be owned by Sony or someone else instead, unless you're doing bad financially.
Yeah, usually if it's like, okay, because especially with Destiny, it's like I can't imagine there's too many whales like supporting that game with how long the content's going, especially if you're not making other projects and what have you. But usually it's like, hey, I could see the acquisition pitch being like, we're thinking about working on Marathon. We got another game, whatever. But a lot of our money is kept towards the dev of this. We would like to, look for partners, publishing partners. and like part of that is that acquisition talk, like, oh yeah, we'll help you produce this, but you'd still be honest about your financial situation for your how you are currently, not just looking for funds for your new projects. You know what I mean? Like you would say, hey, you're not going up to Sony like, hey, we're gonna have to close in 3 months unless you guys can help us out. Like that's not how you do acquisitions. Like no one's gonna agree to that deal. Usually it's like, hey, we have some ideas for stuff right now. A lot of our liquidity or financials are focused on supporting Destiny 2, but we need a little extra in order to get this thing up and running. We'll give you exclusivity, yada yada. Maybe let us be independent with kind of semi-independent with Destiny and let us put on Xbox. But again, you wouldn't just lie about like I mean, I'm not going to mention the companies, but I was aware of one where like a big company, again leaving the names out, a big company was going to be kind of acquired into this other company, and it was like a business that they weren't part of. Like they did a bunch of other stuff in, we'll call it medical fields, and they're kind of bringing in this to add to their portfolio. But the financials for the total health of the business they're acquiring wasn't fully accurate. And when they found out about it, they tried to sue them to back out of the agreement because they already agreed to buy them. And then they're like, oh, you kind of misrepresented the health of your portfolio here. We don't want this anymore because you said it was doing well. It wasn't, but they ended up having to take them anyways. And I have firsthand account of that. So it's like, it's interesting that Sony didn't figure. I'm wondering how quickly Sony figured this out with Bungie, but yeah. And then a lot of people coming out saying like, CEO sucks. Like former devs are saying like he's total ass. The leadership. At least I saw in this one that they did lose some leadership positions at Bungie. I'm trying to go in here and find out exactly who they lost. It wasn't all just like, oh yeah, we let go of QA and a bunch of devs and artists. Like it seemed like, okay, a couple of the higher ups got laid off as well, but I'd have to go through and dig through this article here. They don't highlight it. Another article I saw to highlight it, but anyways, yeah, I mean, it sucks. Like it's, I'm curious what's going to happen with Bungie. I mean, I can't imagine Sony would just let them shutter at this point. They'll change leadership, I guess. That's what you have to do.
I mean, I can't imagine that Sony lets them shutter, especially when Bungie was a big part of Sony trying to expand to like games as a service and using their expertise on Destiny as games as a service. So I could see them downsizing the scope of Bungie. Like Bungie has basically made Destiny for the past, I don't know, how long has Destiny 2 been out? It's got to be like a decade at this point. It's been a really long time for Destiny 2.
Yeah.
I could see them encouraging / forcing them to go to a model where they're releasing games every 3 to 4 years instead of this DLC vision with Destiny 2, because aside from the final shape, I feel like Destiny 2 isn't really in the news anymore. So I highly doubt it's making as much money as when it first came out the first 2 or 3 years. So like shortening the lifespan of their games, I could see that being a way they go. Obviously new leadership or someone from a different Sony studio like assumes a double role of leadership over Bungie. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's unfortunate, but Bungie seems like it's always had financial and leadership and kind of management issues.
Well, it's rough too. Like, when you buy it for that talent for online servers, it's not the CEO and the CFO that are going to help you. It's the devs. Like, it's the people that do it. So I'm like, if you lose those, I mean, you're losing some of that talent that you acquired to help you do this in the first place. Like if you use like the CEO or the CFO or those higher ups, whatever managers, like okay, they just kind of report on it. Yeah, sure, they could have had the team make sure they hit their goals and what have you. It's like, but running the live service games, like that comes down to the other folks, like the teams themselves, right? Not necessarily the team leaders. Like they'll have the ones who have the talent. But I do like that idea though. At least Sony, like, hey, Bungie's gonna have to let some people go. But instead, Sony's like, we'll take some folks over to do this little incubation team. And then I don't know who else is from the rest of Sony Studios are part of that team. But it's like, we'll take some, put them here. So like, it's kind of that lateral move that you'll see, like, if Sony or Microsoft, EA, something like that, like they'll close the studio, but then they'll usually reach out to the folks and be like, hey, we have positions in other places. Usually it requires a move, but yeah, it's nice to see at least you're able to get some of those folks. But yeah, it sucks, and it's like it just seems like poor. It's obviously poor management on that team. Like they talk about in the quote about being just running in the red after the final shape and just spread too thin, and it's just like, yeah, it's clearly you made a mistake. It's like that you shouldn't have got that bonus during the acquisition. Like you don't need the cars, man. Like
yeah, no shit. I would argue that it's exclusively a management problem because like if you know that your company is struggling and you are part of an acquisition and you're like, oh, I'm going to go buy 25 cars, you're the problem. I don't know how else to say it. Like,
yeah, it's got to be tough too. Like, I'm curious how many, like, how many times do we get the situations where Sony Santa Monica, where they were developing a game internally, Cory Barlog's off, kind of pitching the idea for the next God of War. Destiny gets revealed. It's, by all reports, too similar to what Sony Santa Monica is doing, and they just scrap the entire project. Like, how many studios have one of those where, like, they're doing something and they get really far along, or The Last of Us multiplayer, like, they get super far along, but then it's just not coming together, and you have to scrap it. And it's, like, all that time and money that you put into that development. Like, yeah, sure, there's lessons you learn along the way, maybe some updates to your engine that you did, but, like, all that concept art, all the, level design, however far you got, it's like that's just lost time. And it's got to be really hard for a studio who's not, a two-team studio kind of to recover from that. And it's like, especially if that's someone making that right decision of, like a delay decision or, what should we release on time? Should Redfall have been delayed kind of decisions, like, yeah, it should have. But for the projects that never see the light of day, it's like, yeah, we had to scrap that project. And it's like, because, if it had launched, maybe you'd be in a really bad financial situation. You just got to take that early financial hit. But I'm curious how often that happens. And it's got to be, I feel like pretty often. Usually I'm curious, especially for like big AAA studios. Like, has Insomniac had like a game that was super far along and then they just scrapped it? Because they've released games that didn't do well. Like, I can't remember its name because they changed it twice. Not Fuse. Anyways, it's that one that came out on Xbox as well. But
oh god, I know what you're talking about. That's the one that changed art styles, right?
I might have changed like character design. Insomniac Fuse. No, that's what's that Insomniac? What's it called? It had two different names.
Aren't you thinking of the one that was like it looked like a
It's a
co-op
squad shooter.
Yeah, like a squad shooter that went from, I think it went from like super animated kind of Borderlands-esque to like way too realistic.
Yeah, Fuse. Yeah, it is Fuse. Yeah, it had because its original game name was it was announced as Overstrike. That's right. It was Overstrike originally. It changed to Fuse, and it was like a co-op 4-player, unique abilities kind of thing. And yeah, that did not do well. It was like their first multi-platform game after doing Resistance. It's like, yeah, it didn't do well. Yeah, I'm trying to see here. Yeah, not great reviews.
If only they made another Resistance. Rip.
Yeah, but I don't
Rip
think
that
Resistance
storyline
3 did even though like critically did well, and I really liked Resistance 3. I don't think it was enough for Sony to be like, hey, make another one.
I think that Resistance 3 didn't do the best because, well, it didn't have great word of mouth due to the changes in the story, which I won't spoil, but like people didn't love that.
I was like, but you know how 2 ends, right? It's like you're gonna have to do something.
2, just because this is the tangent now. 2 landed in that I don't know how to describe it, but like when something isn't when something is pretty clear and it's not really ambiguous, but because people don't like how it ends, you have to like, you can't be subtle about it at all. You have to like really hammer it in that this is the resolution and the ending and leave no like opportunities for misinterpretation. And I like 2 had to do that. They didn't, in a weird way, they didn't show enough, even though it wasn't subtle. I'll just say, like, since it's super old game, like his death wasn't subtle, but they really just needed to hammer it home even more so that people knew what to expect with 3.
Yeah. And review wise, like they're all very similar. It's like Metacritic 86, 87, 83. Like they're not far off.
And I do know the big problem I had with 3 wasn't the story. It was that I thought the multiplayer for 3 was a huge step down from 2.
Oh,
Like I
definitely,
played the
yeah.
hell out of 2's multiplayer, and I thought 3's multiplayer was very shockingly average, to the point where I was like really surprised why they made all the multiplayer changes. So for me, the big problem with 3 was that I had no reason to go back to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering too if maybe it was like if they had come out a year sooner, because Resistance 1 was 2006, 2 was 2008, and then 3 was 2011. Like if you had come out 2010, would that have been like, I'd have to go back and look at like the gaming landscape in that time to be like, oh hey, yeah, it had a better, talking about like Avowed B move. Like, were there, 2011, were there other games that came out that time that were just better? Was 3 years too long at this point to where it was like, PS3 errors, like when you're starting to get those sequels that are taking longer than they did in the previous generation. But even like Uncharted was, every 2 years it felt like. And Assassin's Creed, was after 2 was essentially every year because they had so many dev studios. So yeah, I'm wondering like if it had come out just like 1 year earlier, would it have performed better, I suppose. But I mean, maybe they were just done too, because it was like, I mean, obviously they had, with the way it ends, like there should have been more. I mean, and then they did Burning Skies, which was on the Vita, but it's like, okay, that's, I don't know, not too much to do there. But anyways, how did we get here? Destiny. Oh, that's right. Like, I forgot. I forgot the path. Like,
about?
I lost my train. How did we get to this point? But yeah, like Destiny thing. Because then there's rumors like, oh, they canceled Destiny 3. It's like, oh, Destiny 3 was actually never really in the works. But yeah, it just it sucks to see anybody. It's got to be tough, especially for a live service game like Destiny. Like I'm surprised. Again, it's been so long. It's like 9 years. It's like, how much money are you pulling in that style of game versus like a battle royale game, like Fortnite and Apex and Call of Duty, with your skins and what have you? It's like, it can't be nearly as much, right? Even though you have like more content that you release versus a battle royale, where battle royale is usually kind of like, hey, here's a new map, here's this, but it's like you actually got to do like story content. Like there's more dev time and costs, I feel like, in that kind of live service versus a battle royale game. But I don't know. It's tough. I'm curious how Marathon's going to do, and if,
I mean,
by the time
I will
that
also
comes out.
say with Destiny that like I found their model super weird of sunsetting story content to the point where you
Mhm.
couldn't get the full story after you purchased it anymore.
Mhm.
Always seemed like a pretty weird strategy to me that maybe indicated like management problems. Like, and I say it maybe indicated management problems because I can't imagine you go into a game developing the game with the expectation that in 2 years you're going to have to sunset story content and story you work so hard on because you can't fit it anymore. Like at some point, it feels like the scope of what they wanted to do must have massively grown beyond what they were capable of or what the technology was capable of, which is cool on the one hand that like they developed such a huge game, but it just, there's no way that was what they thought of at the start, that they were like, yeah, we're gonna only have this content available for 2 years and then we're getting rid of it because we can't fit it in the game anymore after we spent years developing it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Yeah, it's like, did you not think about that long term? Is it because you had like a leader, not leadership, like a team management change, where it's like, okay, someone made that decision, like you were on track to keep it that way, but then someone new came in, like if someone moved on to another studio or something. Like, yeah, I'm curious what leads to that discussion. Because unless you do something, again, we've talked about this to death plenty of times before, but with Destiny, but unless you do like a WoW Cataclysm, or a Realm Reborn situation, it's like, yeah, I don't know how you necessarily do that, and why you would do that in a game like Destiny. But yeah, it's rough. Again, really curious how Marathon's going to do. At least being multi-plat. Well, it should be PC and PS5, right? Hopefully it does well, and they can juggle content and whatnot for two games. So I feel like that's going to be a stinking point if they're spread too thin. Like, are they going to be able to create new IP? Can they get the team that's doing Destiny 2 content, keeping that up? Like, can they reduce them enough to still be sustainable while focusing on more content for Marathon? But I don't know. Yeah, and then the other thing I didn't have to say, but like GameStop just shuttering Game Informer. Like that's another like crazy move.
Out of nowhere.
Right. Like they just released their podcast this week. I hadn't even listened to it yet, and it's just like, and they just shut down the site. Like they couldn't even go in and back up all their stuff.
That's insane.
Yeah. Like
psychopathic behavior.
Right. And like I went to go look at or I was searching something. I forget what it was. And then like one of the searchers, like the top search result, I clicked on it, but it was a Game Informer return, and it just took me straight to that splash screen of, the page being gone. What was crazy was
we don't exist anymore. Good luck.
Yeah. Was Jason Schreier putting into Chat GPT a farewell thing, and it like how close it sounds to what they said. Obviously it's got a little more, like it's got like an extra paragraph and what have you, but it definitely seems like this seems a little like corporate AI kind of nonsense with this statement. But yeah, it was nuts just seeing that, and like the reactions of all the former Game Informer folks. Just it was funny, like a lot of them being like, not saying too much bad about GameStop, but then a couple of them being like, "Yo, fuck you, fuck GameStop, and fuck this." Because like, there's also like,
he wants to say, just do it.
Yeah, because I think one of them's like, I forget the person's name, but they're like being investigated for financial fraud or something like that. So it's just like, oh, they got sued, and it seems like, oh, if we get rid of this, that frees up some cash, I guess, to pay for stuff. But anyways, yeah, it's nuts, man. It's like that's. I mean, not that I've been reading the magazine. I've been listening to the podcast, and sometimes I browse their website if it a link takes me there. But still, it's like just all that talent that you lose. That it's got to be really hard to kind of in the same situation of video games to like laterally move folks and be like, okay, come work at this game site. At least the benefit is a lot of game sites now, I feel like, are a little more open to remote work, especially if you're a contract. But like if you're full time, I know there's a lot of like IGN's kind of split as far as where all their folks are in different IGN offices and whatnot. And some people work from home, but yeah, it's crazy stuff. But yep, that's basically all I got for news. Not much else from this week. I know Gamescom opening night live. I'm trying to see, when does that take place? I believe that's coming up soon, right? Jeff Keighley keeps tweeting about it. Gamescom opening night live. Oh, that's a post show. That's not what I want. Come on, give me should it be like the first result? Where's your dumb AI thing, Google, that just says, hey, yeah, it's
all this energy and time and bullshit around AI, and you still can't Google and get an answer immediately.
August 20th is like looks when opening night live is. So got a little bit, but it'll be this month. Like I said, Microsoft's supposed to have a big presence there. Hopefully it's not just a bunch of trailers for the same stuff we already know and see, and doesn't add new stuff, but that'll be interesting to see what gets shown there. All right, well, we can go ahead and move from there to what we've been playing. So I know Isley, well, let's start with that. Discord's ratting you out that you're in FF14 right now, but I'm assuming you've been playing FF14.
Yeah,
just the entire time.
Pretty much. We did finish the MSQ a while ago. Not like a ton while ago, but a couple weeks ago. So I've just been leveling. I played through the MSQ on Dancer, so that's leveled Red Mage as well, and now I'm working on Reaper. Yeah, just basically doing that, playing Reaper, doing the new dungeons. The new dungeons are very, very good. Like the new post game expert roulette dungeons. They're really good. I haven't done the raid yet, but I don't know, I might either do that today, or I might work on it throughout the week and just do maybe like the quests in one tier a night if I can get through it. But that's basically all I really have left of new content, and then basically just waiting for the Alliance raid to come out. I want to be geared for that so we can go right in and do it. But other than that, I was obviously playing Shadow of the Erd Tree. I did get to the final boss, finally. Nice. I am currently still fighting the final boss, and I'm unsure if I am capable of beating this boss. So it's gonna be, to the point where I went and completely rebuilt my character and learned how to use a shield, because I have never used a shield in any Souls game.
Really?
Bloodborne Soul, no, I've never used shields. I always either two-hand or power stance my weapons and just deal with it. And this one, I was like, I need a shield for some of these things because I do not know how to dodge them. Like, I cannot figure it out. There's just too much going on. So, remains to be seen if that will ever be completed. But I got to the end all by myself. I did it with me and my mimic. But nice. I don't know. It's just, obviously no spoilers. It's a bitch. It's very mean. There's a lot going on. And it's just, I don't know. My brain to hand dexterity has reached its limit, and there's just, it hits very hard, it hits very fast, and I've had enough.
Yeah, that kind of feels like the same thing I've heard from a lot of people regarding the final boss. I haven't played it yet, obviously, but I feel like that is the same criticism I've heard, is that maybe they went too far with this final boss.
It's a lot. It's very cool. Don't get me wrong. It's a very, very cool fight. And I'm never I don't want to say I'm ever frustrated with it. I'm more frustrated with myself through anything. Cause it's I don't want to get into spoilers, but I could have dodged that. I should have dodged that. I should have been more careful. I shouldn't have agreed. That kind of stuff. It's it's a very much I could figure this out if I really had the opportunity to kind of observe a little bit more. It's just, yeah, a lot of people are saying that this is the hardest boss in a Souls game ever, which I think is, I mean, for me, yeah, but I don't know about ever, ever.
Even Ishin or Hatred.
But it's definitely it's up there, and it doesn't feel unfair. It just feels way overpowered. A single attack should not be chunking me for as much as it's removing my blood. It's just I don't feel underleveled, especially because the DLC has its own kind of leveling system kind of thing. So I have not all, but a lot of the little fragments that level you up. Mm-hmm. And I did go through right before, I mean, I did the final boss a couple times and was I have some lingering things that I didn't quite finish. I'm going to go through and finish those, and didn't have any problem with the lingering things that I had left for later because they were too hard when I encountered them. So it's I don't think it's necessarily an issue with my build or my level or the DLC upgrade or anything like that. This bitch just really chunks you. It's so unforgiving, but in a way that's it's still cool, if you know what I mean. The fight is still really cool, and it's still very interesting, and I feel if I could just do it enough times, I could get it, but I also have reached my limit sometimes where it's I don't know what's going on, help.
Yeah, I remember Let Me Solar was saying oh, this boss is really tough, but then eventually got it down. But
yeah,
I haven't gotten there yet. I need to go back at some point. I was telling Izzy last week while you were gone. I think I had mentioned maybe in the previous episode about changing up to some of the DLC weapons because I was having trouble from Liza P. Switching over to the Elden Ring style, and the parry shields just weren't doing it for me because it's not the same. And I know they added some DLC shields, but I don't think they're gonna be quite the same either. But I tried out the new weapons, a little different. I'm I really like this. It's playing better. But then I was telling him I never jump, and when I went to go back, he's let me go fight that big old walking fire basket in the opening area, and oh, this guy is actually super easy because you just once you have enough shag tree, shaguda tree, whatever the tree fragments are. Charcuterie boards. To where you don't get one shot by the AoE flames approaching. If you don't dodge it, it's those things are actually super easy. It's if they stomp, you just jump and you dodge the fire. It's okay, easy. And I went to go do it on another one, but that other one that's by that camp does the meteor call down or a bunch of hot rocks. But if you where I had pulled them wasn't a great spot, and if you're underneath them, it's okay, yeah, the rocks won't get you because they'll just hit him. But it was like just a funky spot. And like it's one of those annoying fights. Like you got to hit the leg until they fall down, and then you stab in the eye, and then you get back up, and then you do it again. It's like it reminds
They're
me of this one annoying like boss you have to do in Lies of P that's very similar. Where it's like, okay, this is just like it's not fun. Like I just want to get rid of them. But yeah, I was like, okay, but yeah, I got to get back to playing more of that because I was definitely having a good time. Just like I'll get into it later, but I got wrapped up in Baldur's Gate. But Isley, what about you? I know.
Still been working my way through Alan Wake. The second one, I finished Saga's storyline up to the point of no return, or at least where it tells you the point of no return is. So I basically played both parts, got to the point with Saga where you battle Scratch the first time outside, and you find out that the like Alan Wake you've been interacting with has been Scratch. And keep in mind, I haven't played Alan's storyline, so I know my understanding may be off of this, but from playing Saga's storyline, you find out that the Alan you've been interacting with has been Scratch this entire time. He disappears in the fight, so you don't completely beat him. After figuring out he's Scratch, you get control again, and I had all of the like tools like the bolt cutter and the screwdriver and everything, so I went back to all of the areas that Saga has access to and pretty much just explored everything. Tried to get all the like cultist stashes that were marked on my map, since you get them marked on your map. Tried to find all of the nursery rhymes since they get marked on your map. Did the final FBC nursery rhyme thing, which was kind of a fun little puzzle. Then after that, I went to play as Alan, and back to the Dark Place, New York. I played through the absolutely insane chapter that is the musical number. And I sat in front of that screen for so long just listening to the song. That song is really catchy. That they have like the metal song that they sing is really fucking catchy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one that they did at Game Awards?
I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
so I played through that chapter, and then with Alan right now, I'm in the point where you're exploring the Ocean View Hotel, and you're trying to put together the murder play in the Ocean View Hotel.
Yeah, I love Alan's sections of just being like switching the okay, it's this theme, and like it just changes the environment. That's such a cool feature. The one thing that stands out about their engine though that really kind of breaks my immersion time is like there's a part in the hotel, and I don't know if you got there. This exists at the lobby as well, but like the main entrance of the lobby, when you go into it from the street, it like you can tell the engine is like unrendering everywhere else you just were, and like caching that, like, okay, the player is now going to be in the hotel. Let's make sure we load the hotel data. Then I go out in the city, and there's like this half-second delay. There's another part later in that hotel where there's like there's a like a Penrose step kind of hallway where like you enter a door and you don't come out on the floor you're on another floor, but it does the same thing where there's like it's like you pass like a bathroom, and like halfway point the bathroom is like that lag of now you're loaded into the next spot. And like that's the only time, because I didn't notice it that much in the early portions of Alan's play, but like in the hotel is where I noticed it the most. And like every time it happened, I'm like, oh, like, okay, they kind of gave away the fact that, some, not timing, but like the world is shifted or they're unloading assets, it like kind of stood out, and it was a little bit annoying. But
I haven't had that too much. I don't know if maybe they've patched some of it, but I love the shifting gameplay of Alan. I feel like his sections are more of like kind of like classic horror game, like Silent Hill, Resident Evil puzzle sections where you're trying to piece together the scenes to like figure out the path forward, which I really enjoyed. Whereas Saga's sections are a bit more of a straightforward, like you know where you have to go, you generally know what you have to do. But it takes place in the spooky woods. So it feels like they hit a lot of different genres of horror games with this, which I've really enjoyed so far. the scenes changing is just so cool, and Alan's sections are so fucking weird. But yeah, it's been a really fun game. I like it so much more than the first one. It's the first one's like a joke compared to this. Yeah, so playing through, probably try to beat it in the next week or so. I don't know how far I really am. I assume that if I got to the point of no return for Saga, since there's still some parts left in Saga's story, that I probably have like a chapter or two left of Saga's story. And if that same structure holds true, I'm assuming there's probably a similar number of chapters for Alan Wake's gameplay, which, you know, we'll see if I'm right or not. I don't really need a spoiler for it. But yeah, just really enjoying it. Fun game, weird game, and I'm excited to play more.
Yeah, the watching people play that game and just the reaction to the We Sing segment is like, it was just made it so fun to watch. They're like, I should have been like, what the fuck? And like just going through it was just so fun to watch. Unless they died a bunch, and when you finally give you the weapon, I'm like, okay, now you're just listening to that same beat. Or they get trapped, they don't know what to do in the section where it's like it's the street and you have to follow the arrows and they don't realize it. And it's just like, okay, I'll skip ahead until they get to the bit. But I always like jumping to when they think it's over. And then Alan also, he says different stuff when he wakes up in the green room, when he's like he's just like, that was pretty good, or like he'll say other like, what the hell is that? Like he has different lines that he'll say.
He says something really positive about it, like he comes out of it and he's like, actually, you know, that was pretty good, or like that was pretty weird, or like he says something that basically acknowledges that it was like strange but pretty fun.
He'll be like, one of the lines is like, I wasn't expecting that. Like I didn't see that coming. Like, and then I love when you finally actually do finish it and the janitor's just humming it. Champion of light. And he's like pretty catchy.
And then you talk to him and he's like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty good too.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up with the janitor yet. So I know the janitor is the janitor from Control. Mm-hmm. But I haven't figured out like what it makes me really curious. Honestly, it makes me really curious about the next Control game. So I kind of mentioned this in Discord, but something that is really interesting about Alan Wake 2 to me is Alan Wake 2 is much, much better for having Control come first. In Alan Wake 1, the explanation of the clicker and how the clicker works in the game is kind of bullshit, and then you don't, spoiler for Alan Wake 1, obviously, but like in Alan Wake 1, you don't really do anything with the clicker. Like you kind of get the clicker and then the game is kind of over. Like you get the clicker and you put the clicker in a creature and then the game is kind of over. So this entire time you're playing through Alan Wake 1 and you finally get the clicker, which is kind of a plot element that's introduced at the very end of it. So it's like you weren't building up to the clicker. It's just suddenly a plot element that's at the end of it. And then you use the clicker and then you kind of like win the game, and there's the twist of Alan Wake 1 where it's like you're not quite sure what just happened. So it's got a lot of elements of like you don't understand what the dark presence is, you don't understand what the clicker is, you don't really see any of like what's happening with the Taken. And the story is really interesting, but that coupled with like kind of unpolished gameplay, it gives you the experience that the game as a whole is kind of unpolished. With Control coming in between and Control introducing you to the FBC, para-utilitarians, and objects of power, you kind of like, it explains so much more about Alan Wake 2, and Alan Wake 2 makes so much more sense as one person's story as a para-utilitarian, and with the clicker being an object of power, it just flows so much more smoothly. And I understand the narrative structure of like, you know, as a sequel, you learn more and more about the game. But I do feel like most of what makes Alan Wake 2 make sense and work as a better story is actually explained in Control and not in Alan Wake 1 or in Alan Wake 2. So it's been kind of an interesting experience with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm definitely curious where the next game goes, or Control goes. Will it pick up like immediately after? How much will it touch on it? You know what I mean? Like, will it just be kind of a throwaway thing, or will it be more like intertwined, like right. A Gen V kind of The Boys situation where like there's some important stuff that happens, you know, things can be referenced. that kind of feed
I mean,
into.
it feels like Control is going to have to answer questions about both Alan and God, I can't remember where Control left off. So Control left off with Jesse Faden taking over the FBC, kind of pushed back the hiss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Control 2, I guess, could really be its own story because I don't really remember any cliffhangers in the first Control.
It'd be kind of fun if it was like it started as the aftermath and cleanup of, because like, I mean, never mind. I can't. It would spoil Alan Wake 2 if I talk about it. But
I have my own questions and theories of like, given the story structure of this game with playing as Alan and playing as Saga, where I'm at right now, I'll just say that I think it would be really cool if the next Control game was actually a Control Alan Wake hybrid, and you're playing as Alan for part of it, as Saga for part of it, and as Jesse Faden for part of it, and it has like 3 different kind of structures to the game again. I think that'd be pretty cool, but Control was obviously a much more action-oriented game than Alan Wake, so maybe it wouldn't quite work. But yeah, I'm excited to play through it. Like I said, I feel like I'm a good chunk of the way through the game. Maybe I'm, but don't spoil that.
Have you, because I don't know how far the game lets you get one way or the other before like making you switch, because obviously you can't, I know you can't do like the final bits of the game as like you have to do them. I think the final bits are more like it's in the order it wants you to be. Like it's more like you don't have control on who you play as for like the last parts. But do you get to the old folks home as Saga?
Yes.
Okay, and then you got to the like that extra building that's next to old folks home. There's like no power.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, that's
I like
that's
that.
part of that's part of what Saga does before you that's part of what Saga does before you finish her section. That's like one of the last parts, and then you go through the old folks home, you go through the wellness center.
Okay, so her section must end. I don't think they hard like it, but is it? Do you have that concert?
Have a concert?
Like, have you gotten to a part where like there's like a music playing in like a essentially I'll call it like a concert in like Saga section? Like, have you gotten to that?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'm curious where
it's kind of vague because like there's a part in Saga section where you have to get the record. Okay. You deal with Cynthia, you get the record.
Right.
You play the record to go into the overlap. The overlap is like a weird, like sunken, flooded area. And then pretty much after that, you're done with Saga section. You go back to Bright Falls. When you're in Bright Falls, you're supposed to give the clicker to Alan. So you go to the sheriff's station, you give the clicker to Alan. That's when you find out that Alan is Scratch. And then once you find out that Alan is Scratch, he teleports to the back area of the sheriff's station. You fight him, and then it opens up again, and you get this notification that like you should make sure you do everything you should do around here. You won't be able to go back.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then okay. That's interesting. That's where it is. Yeah, and I think it's like it's her, it's her partner, and then the Bureau of Control person. They're all sitting there in the office. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Then okay. Then I know right where they're at then. Yeah. I'm wondering then like what would happen if you tried to go forward? Like at what point would it stop? It has to stop. Like with the way last versus game, like it would have to stop you, like being like you can't proceed until you play Alan. Like I'm curious. Like right now, it sounds like it's just telling you like, hey, you're getting close to essentially like the end game quarter with Saga, but I wonder where it would actually prevent you from going. Like
yeah, it's tough because since it gave me the point of no return, I obviously didn't want to proceed further because this was the first point where it felt like a natural switch point to me, where I should go play as Alan. So I think it would have given me the option to continue further. I just was like, if this is a point for no return for Saga, I've played a lot of Saga, it feels like a good spot to switch to Alan.
Yeah. I wonder where. I think I know where it might do it, but yeah, we can talk about it once you get further along. Then we kind of speculate on where it probably would like hard stop and be like, okay, now you switch over. But yeah, they're it's fun definitely having the two different kind of especially different like enemies, like the shadow specters with Alan, and then like possessed people when you're.
I will say with the shadow specters, while I get what they're going for with I get what they're going for of not knowing which specters are going to attack you and which aren't. So it's like a gameplay mechanic to try to make you use up your flashlight. In practice, I don't really find it as interesting or fun as Saga Section. Like I get it. It just the shadow enemies are kind of boring to me. Whereas I've enjoyed the creepy Taken that Saga had so far, like the weird diver Taken that's like two heads on each other is really spooky and strange. The axe throwing guys are kind of a nightmare. The wolves are really spooky. The normal Taken are fine. The shadows so far just feel like the normal Taken, and I'm sure they like open up and you get like a creepier version of it eventually. But at the moment, with where I'm at in the hotel, the shadow Taken are just kind of like, yeah, I get the shtick. I get that like you can tell which ones are going to attack you generally by like they carry a weapon or they move at you more aggressively. You can shine your flashlight at the normal ones to make them go away. It just feels like a mechanic that kind of slow, which leads me to like enjoying the gameplay of Saga Section more, but I enjoy the puzzle pieces, the scene changing, and like the weirdness of Alan Section a lot. So we'll see as I get further along if my opinion of that changes.
Yeah, good game. Yeah, I was hoping I wish there was like an easier way to watch you like stream it, but yeah, I'd like to. I was like, oh, I want to see when he gets to the we sing part.
I figured when you kept talking about like how you wanted to watch me play a section, as soon as I got to that part, I was like, oh, this is what he wanted to
This is the section.
watch me.
This is it. I understand now.
Yep.
Yep. I was like, I get it. Because I was watching that section. It wasn't spooky at all, obviously, but I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh my God, this is wild. This is so fun. The song is really catchy. I literally stopped for like 5 minutes because the song does loop and it has like a spot that makes sense where the song starts looping, specifically like if you're not moving forward through the level fast enough. And I was like, okay, I need to move forward. The song's just looping. But man, that was fun just watching everything.
Yeah. It sucked though, like when it first came out on I think only on PC, maybe on consoles, but I think it was just PC, where like when it gets that final scene where they're in the TV at the TV station or the TV show, it like there's a desync between the audio and the visuals.
Yes,
and
that still exists.
Patched. Oh, it still exists? Okay. Because it didn't happen to me, because I was like, okay, that's fine. So I don't know if it still happens. I wonder what causes it, because I know like it seemed like they patched it pretty quick. So I wonder maybe if there's something else that kind of causes it seems like one of those things like, oh, like a Skyrim, there's just too much RAM memory, too much stuff in there. You got to clear the cache or something like that. Like, because anytime that always did bug me out when I get someone, they realize, it's the audio's not synced up properly. But
yeah, that part unfortunately still exists. It still desyncs the audio, not during a singing portion, but like there's a vocal portion afterwards that it's desynced from.
Yeah, when everyone dance and whatnot. But it's funny because they have two versions of that online. Like the actual band, the real life band, has a version where it's just the song, and there's a version where it's like it's all of the video files like that you see on the TV screen of people singing, Mr. Show and everybody else, and you can watch like a music video, but it's a shorter version, so they cut out some of the guitar solos and bits that they'll play where it's like clearly, okay, we'll repeat these chords if the player's walking too slow, like that gets cut out, but they exist in like the longer version if you watch the actual band's upload. And sometimes I'll listen to that song, just go through it, it's fun. But yeah, like I said, I haven't gone back to Elden Ring. I got to get back to it. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, doing my Durge run. And I was trying to remember. I was like, okay, I need to like. I was like, let's get out of Act 2. So I got out of Act 2. I found the squishy wall thing that you're talking about. I didn't realize. I was like, oh, it's here. And then I was like curious. Okay, what happens if I get there now? It's like, okay, come with me, and then you all get dragged down. I'm like, oh, this is like the place you can get to normally. I'm like, okay.
So was it the same area then?
It's the same area down below where it's like it's the one half of that area that you can get to normally. I forget how you get there. Like you find there's like a back entrance in the dungeon that you can get there. Like you just climb down. It's like, okay, but I just quick loaded. I didn't want to go. I was just curious like where it would take me. I thought maybe it would take me into the actual main portion of that underground area with like all where the mind flayers are being hatched and where you might find Missouri taken if you were doing a good playthrough. But I went back, did the Ketheric fight, beat him, Merkel, got to Act 3. I'm in Baldur's Gate, did the first main section, kind of did all the stuff there. I'm curious how the murder mystery will play out. Because I know, like, obviously, one way to get in is just take the hands yourself and make the offering, make the sacrifice. But like, it hasn't been like a Dark Urge specific, like, oh, there's a murder going on in the name of Ball, and it's like, warn the person, or alternatively kill them. Like, there's no like Dark Urge version to kill them. Obviously, I can just not say anything and then just let them die. But I do like where the Durge story, like, I knew I had spoilers of aspects of the Durge character. I forget how it got spoiled for me. But I knew that going in. But the actual storyline of the character, I like, because now you find, like, because Act 3 is obviously where you find out like more about a lot of the characters, origin characters and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, I like what they did here. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. Like, I wasn't like going in like with expectations on the origins of the character. But I was like, oh, this is interesting. I kind of like where they took this, and it definitely fits well with the main story. But yeah, so I'm there, and then I'm just at the point where I'm like, okay, I should probably figure out like get all the armor pieces I need, figure out, okay, what do I need for this person. And I realized, like, one of the armor pieces that I could wear, the potent robe that you get, I think it's I forget what it has. It's a cantrip bonus on it. I believe it's like if you cast a cantrip, you get a bonus. I forget what the bonus is, but it's like, it's really strong because you're always doing Eldritch Blast as the warlock.
You get, if you cast a cantrip of a certain, or if you cast a cantrip, you get a bonus action of a cantrip from like a few specific schools, and one of those schools is Eldritch Blast.
Yeah, so it's like, it's a really good gear piece, but you can't get it on Durge because spoilers, but the bard that you get it from dies because you don't, like, they die, and then the quest they have you on is to save the tieflings, but the tieflings are dead because you killed the grove. So it's like, you can't get it. So there's like a mod to where you can get the modded in so a Durge player can actually have that on their run. So I'm like, oh, I don't have that. I'm like, that's a little, that's kind of a bummer because I'm like doing the Eldritch Blast build. There is a way, I guess, to do it where like you don't kill her, like you knock her out before like a big thing happens on the Durge playthrough, to where instead of her showing up, it's a different character that shows up, and then she's still there in Act 2. But I'm like, but the tieflings won't be there in Act 2. So I guess you'd have to also not kill the Grove on your Durge run and just be like a good Durge, I guess, to get it on there. So I was like, okay, well, I don't get that piece, but I'm like, I went and bought the hat I needed from the Sorcerer Sundries, whatever. But yeah, it's kind of going. It's interesting running into characters who like know other characters but don't say anything, because I don't have them, like the weapon stealer that knows Karlach, or the cat that's killing the pigeons, but I don't have Gale there to talk to them. But having Astarion with me, it's nice because running into those vampires in that one inn or whatever, where you find like the dead body underneath the bed that leads you to the church murder mystery. That's how you find out the ball situation. Like, there's the two vampires up there who are like discussing trying to leave or what have you, but Astarion with me. So like, he like grabs one and he like just holds his face underneath the sun coming through a window, like trying to get information. Because I also mistakenly, I talked before, I freed the demon that was in Act 2 in Shar's, the Gauntlet of Shar. So because I didn't kill him, Raphael didn't tell Astarion about the logo on his back and what it means. So Astarion got super pissed at me. Luckily, I convinced him to stay, but he still doesn't know. So when he interrogates the one of the vampires, and he's like, or vampire underlings, because they're not technically full-fledged vampires, but he like interrogating, like trying to figure out like what is Cazador's plan, and like that's how he figures out like what Cazador's trying to do, and how he's involved. He still doesn't know exactly what the back means. He just knows that Cazador has a plan and he needs Astarion. But it was funny. Like I walked up to the Gurs, that's right, that are in Act 3, and at first I actually walked up with Astarion because he's in my party, of course, and they're like, oh, you Daywalker, not quite like that, but they're like, oh, you have to help us get the kids back and yada yada. I'm like, nah, it's your problem because I'm being an asshole evil person. And even Thara's like, yeah, but then they get into a fight, and I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily want to fight them right now. So I went back and I made Astarion leave my party, like we'll just walk away. Then I went and talked to him. I'm like, nah, it's still your problem. Like I'm not gonna help you. And then I brought him back with me and I walked up, and then they see him like, what are you doing here? You should be helping us get our kids back. And I was like, nah, I'm out, and I just leave. But yeah, it's funny. There's there's one place I guess I didn't go into where there's the two people in the Underdark you come across. For the one lady, she's looking for like the herb or whatever, the plant, and like her husband's like clearly not all there, but like you can give the plant to him to cure him, but it turns out he's kind of a douchebag. Or you can give it to her for the money. I never actually went and talked to her back in Baldur's Gate. Like,
Oh yeah, she's
she's
a horrible person too.
Yeah, she's
They're both awful.
Yeah,
they're both horrible.
No one's shopping here because and she has like no money, so like it's funny when you try to trade, like she has no gold because no one's buying because she doesn't have any of the good herbs people are looking for. But I guess I just never went to that shop, and then also I never went into the Baldur's Gate Gazette, like the newspaper place. Like I'm like, I just never went into this building. I think because when you get into the lower city, like it's all about, oh, there's an active plot. I'll go talk to all the people who are on the hit list. That leads me to some other stuff, which like led me other directions, and I just never went to the Gazette building, like because nothing necessarily leads you there. And like I walk in and I try to go downstairs and like, hey, you can't go down there. Only the head of the paper can go down there. And I go talk to him, and he's a total douchebag. He's like, oh, look who it is. You led the refugees here. I'm gonna write a bad article about you in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I'm friends with Gortash. And then he's like, oh, if you were, I would have heard about it. Guards, get them out of here. And he kicks me out. I'm like, oh, I don't want him to kick me out right now. So I loaded right before that. I'm like, because I want to go in there and try to pickpocket him. And one thing I forgot to do too is when you go to the circus, I forgot to pickpocket the two people that let out the displacer beast and the little like raptor thing, because you can take the keys from their back pocket, so they don't do that. But I was like, oh well, it's extra XP, I guess. But yeah, it was funny. I was saying in Discord, but like going up there and trying to say, oh, Minthara should be the one who goes up to do the quote unquote magic trick or whatever, and she's like, how about I, kill you and just bleed you dry as an idea instead? Like she does not want to go up there. It's so funny. But I'm like, nope, you're going up. but yeah, I did that. And yeah, I'm having fun just going through. Yeah, I'm trying to I'm curious with the way Durge plays out, how much different things will go with some end stuff. But because obviously I'm going to go for an evil ending. But with the way the Durge plays and the Durge specific storyline, I'm wondering if there's more ending options for Durge. Not getting into any spoilers, and I'm curious too. Like it's funny they go, like someone tells you, I forget who. Oh, Gortash, he's the one. When you talk to him, he'll be like, he wants you to take out Orin because he doesn't like her. But then of course Orin wants you to take out Gortash when you find her eventually. But he's the one that warns you that someone in your camp isn't who you think they are. And I'm like, well, I only have one, because I'm playing an evil playthrough. Only one other person is at camp. It's Lizelle. And so I'm like, it's obviously gonna be her because it's not gonna take anybody from your main party to be the person who gets taken. So I'm like, it's just gonna be Lizelle. Like it's just, that's how it's gonna happen. So
someone from your camp. I wonder who. You're like, well, there's one person there, so
yeah, only one. And it's like, and they would have left if I hadn't done anything. So it was funny, like trying to convince her to stay with Vlaakith, or instead of going with Kithric to turn against her. Like you have to do like her story really turns her to be like, she goes against Vlaakith. Like I'm trying to remember, like early on there is I think a persuasion check either way to like say like maybe Kithric is right, or Kithric is right, or you could stay, you can believe Vlaakith. And I think it's an easy check either way. But this is like, she thinks that, with everything you learn about Orpheus and yada yada, like to convince her to stay with the queen, you have to roll like a 30. to convince her, which I did, but it was just like, it was interesting
Holy
that like they
crap.
seemed to kind of push her to really go that direction for her story as the better, because it's the better play for the character. But yeah, like, no, I want like the bad, it's essentially a bad ending for her to and the Githyanki to side with the queen. And then I just killed Voss, like, and he's up there, talking to Raphael, and he asks me, he's like, "Did you talk to Raphael?" And I'm like, "Nah," like, I just like, deception. And then he's like, I'm like, "You just get out of my way." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm gonna kill you then." So I just killed him right then and there. So he's dead. Which is funny because he's dead, and then I go down to the Emperor's like hiding place, and there's still like Githyanki down there looking for me. I'm like, I killed Voss, man. Like, I'm on your side, clearly. Like, so, but that's their.
They just don't like you.
Yeah, so I'm like, I guess I'll go down here. Like, I don't want to get this fight right now. I want to go ahead and get the rest of the gear, and I gotta like double check and make sure I got like, all the proper gear for folks and make sure they're geared up. But yeah, it's fun playing that game. Just going through, and it'll be fun, especially when I get to like the manufacturing place where they make the watch, and like just blowing that place up without freeing any of the people there. But I'm like, I guess you could learn about the underwater place by just going to that warehouse and finding the submarine. So I don't have to worry about them being like, oh, because that's how I learned about it the first time. So they're like, oh, we have people who are kidnapped and they're here in the Iron Throne. So I just go there. But yeah, it's interesting how much gear is like seems to be locked behind the good playthroughs because they're from characters that would otherwise die if you went evil. Because I was curious, like, oh, best in slot. Like, so a lot of them is like, oh, you buy, but sometimes it's like, oh, this is a quest you get from doing this thing, or this is a quest from.
But I know you also get access to different evil gear vendors, right?
It doesn't seem like I haven't seen anybody that's new or seen like, it's not everything. It's just like small pieces of like, it's like best in slot stuff. It seems like miscellaneous, but there obviously is other stuff you can put there.
I mean, I won't spoil it, but I do know that like some of the best in slot gear in Act 3 is from the evil vendors, not the good vendors.
Yeah, I don't know who would be quote unquote an evil vendor. I guess maybe if I align myself with like.
I mean, do you want me to spoil who the evil vendor is?
I'm pretty sure I know who the evil vendor is if I just go down and do something else. Like, I probably know exactly what you're gonna talk about if you spoil it, but I just have to get there first.
Okay.
And then I'm sure they'll have some stuff there. But yeah, then I'm like trying to figure out like, okay, how do I want to kind of, now that I'm getting to the higher level, what kind of Sorlock build do I want to go? Because there's a couple different ones, or like there's just the Sorcerer Warlock. Some are like Sorcerer Warlock Fighter, and then some are like Sorceress Warlock, one Fighter, one something else. I think like Thief or something. It's like these weird little kind of mix-ins. But yeah, and I didn't realize that one character who above the brothel, there's like the one lady who's about to service the client, and like you realize they're a part of the Absolute, and they transform into a like the brain turns them into a Squid Game Mind Flayer. And you fight them there, and then when you talk to that person, they're like
they're a Squid Game.
I was trying to remember the name of the Mind Flayers, and they're squid faces, so they're squid. But like you could talk to them, they'll be like, oh, think about a place you like, and yada yada, and like they give you a buff that's like a bonus 1d6 to all like rolls that like last until long rest. But I don't know if you can reapply that by talking to them again, because I haven't long rested since then. I was like, this is a really nice buff. I've been doing so many checks now where it's like, because it was always funny early on with the staring whenever you lockpick, it's like he gets so many bonus rolls. And obviously, if you rolled a thief character, it'd be very similar. But he has so many bonus rolls that are like, oh, the bonus is this. Where like, as my character, I'd have so many bonuses, and it'd be like, oh, you need a 15. But all my bonuses are like, the bonuses will be anywhere from 16 to 28. I'm like, well, I don't even have to roll anything. Unless I get a 1, it's not a fail. So I'm just like, click skip. So it's funny. I love how I don't remember if they showed you that previously, like the min-max of your bonus rolls.
They did, yeah.
Okay, I don't remember that at all, but yeah, it's fun. And I told Raphael to shove it on his proposal, because I'm going to the route I'm going to go is I'll have depending on how it plays out, I think, because I don't know how different it'll be for Durge, but I know like I'll probably just have the Emperor absorb Orpheus, not free him, and then do that as the evil playthrough in that final fight. But yeah, I'm wondering like how, because I'm like, okay, how many people are going to be there at the end to help me? Because I'm like, okay, well the Gurs aren't, because I know how I'm gonna ascend Astarion, so they won't be there to help. And then so alternatively, then that means Shadowheart's group will be. I think the gnomes, no matter which one you side with, will, because I did free them in Act 2, which I didn't need to, but I was curious, like, oh, are they still there? And I like broke the wall and they ran out. And I'm like, okay, I guess I freed them. And bonus XP. Not really the evil thing to do, wouldn't have been to free them. But so I guess they're there. So once I blow up the factory, they'll probably be on my side in the end game. Shadowheart's group, the Shard worshippers, will be there most likely. I'm curious how that's going to go down too, because I'm going to have to go there. I guess I'll just be all friendly and I don't fight them, I guess. So it's not bonus XP. I'm just thinking about like all the XP I lose, but you get like max rank or max level pretty fast in that section. But yeah, I'm curious what you could do in the Baldur's Gate Gazette building. Like I'm assuming you could change what the paper's going to print. I think there's something related to that quest wise. Like, oh, you could change what's printed and something will happen, but I don't know. We'll have to see.
Funny story about that place. I found it on accident and got kicked out, and I was mad about it. So I tried to sneak in, I think with Gale, and I got him stuck in an elevator.
Uh-oh.
Because I snuck in, but then I couldn't get out of the elevator because I didn't have a key. So I can't remember. I was trying to get out. I think we had to reload, but it took me so long to do it that I didn't want to reload because and then I don't know if I ever went back and finished it because I was just mad.
That's funny.
Like, I just remember getting him stuck and was like, whoops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to mess around there, figure out what's going on. Yeah, I'm curious too, like how the conversation will play out with that guy in the Source of Sundries who's looking for the Night Song, and just be like, I just tell him like, hey, I have information. He's like, okay, go up to the left to the automated recorder person at the front desk, and then like for taxes, say taxes. But I guess I can go up there and be like, yeah, they were here, and because I killed her in my playthrough to let Shadowheart fulfill her Shard worship destiny thing. So I guess I can just tell him like, yeah, they were there, they're dead, and then he probably gets mad, and that's how I fight him. Or I could just I don't know, lie and then just kill him while I'm up there. But because I got to take him out, get his stuff. But yeah, a lot of stuff to do in Act 3 still, especially once you get into that lower city. Got to look for everything, and all that stuff. But good times. And then yeah, definitely got to get back to. I guess now that I'm out of Act 2, now I can go back to just kind of like taking it slow between doing stuff in Act 3, playing Elden Ring, and just kind of going back and forth between the two. Whereas like I wanted to get out of the Gauntlet of Shar, continue with Act 2, finish that, and just get to Act 3, because then it's like, okay, there's so much stuff I could do now, because I'd finished everything in Act 2. It's like the only thing to do is just to finish Gauntlet of Shar and beat Merkel and whatnot. It's like, okay, now there's so many side quests I can do in Act 3. I can just go in like, oh, go do the anti-Ethel thing. Okay, and then go do this thing. Oh, go do this thing. And just kind of knock them out one by one. And just have fun that way. But yeah. Yeah, other than that, not playing much of anything else. Just really kind of focusing on Baldur's Gate. Which, like I said, would be real fun to kind of re-roll. Yeah, because I almost thought, like, should I re-roll? I was like, nah. I'm at the end of Act 2. I'm not going to re-roll. I'll just finish what I got, because it had been so long since I played. But, all right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there then. I'm going on for a bit now. But, basically sound like he was going to say something. He's like, no, I'm just getting ready to say goodbye.
I was just getting ready to say goodbye.
I just want to make sure you weren't going to pop in with some last minute thing. You're like, oh, I talk about air fryers.
Oh, actually.
Or toilet bowl cleaners. No, but,
huh?
We did talk about that last time.
I went on some tangents with some stuff at the end of last episode. But anyways. All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap it there. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Isley. Thank you, Zaya, for joining.
Yep.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Later.